Welcome back to the Metal Exchange. Justin and Chris here with you for the first album of the month, which obviously means a request here at the Metal Exchange. And this week we're going to do the Australian power metal band Lords' Set in Stone from 2009. But before we get there, Chris, how are you? How was your week?
It was good. You were there. So.
Yeah, we were. We enjoyed a wedding for a longtime friend of ours, somebody who's actually in the music industry. So we tried to get a live recording at the wedding, but for some reason he had no interest in having us record there.
He seemed to have other things going on, so
he was definitely preoccupied. And before I get into some of the albums and songs that kind of came out this week or stuff that we were listening to, Tool must have listened to the episode and said no better time to announce a U.S. tour than the day our episode dropped this past Monday. Tool announced a full U.S. headlining tour. They kick off in January and they'll be going through the spring, which is really nice to see. I guess it's kind of like the second leg of the Fear Inoculum tour. I'm going to try to catch it. They're actually playing not far from me at all. So when I know tickets, I think have just gone on sale. So I'm going to try to grab a pair, which I just thought was really, really timely.
Yeah, they should just play the same night AEW's in town, and then you could kill two birds with one stone.
You just need to put them in a bigger arena. What did you listen to this week? I know it was kind of a shortened week as we were both away.
Believe it or not, I actually listened to something this morning. I managed to squeeze in. I had to listen to the new Beast in Black single "One Night in Tokyo," which, whereas the first single was a little bit on like the mid tempo, and it kind of, if you watch the music video, seemed to have kind of like a theme to it. This one was kind of your more typical Beast in Black, fast paced, electronic, like heavy keyboard heavy, like, you know, classic Beast in Black, as classic as a band that's about to release their third album can be. But I enjoyed that song quite a bit, and I also saw that Ronnie Atkins' acoustic EP released on Friday. I haven't had a chance to listen to all the songs from it, but being that it's Ronnie, I'm sure it's going to be great. So I look forward to that. And also last week, another band I'm really looking forward to their entire album, Ad Infinitum, released another single from their upcoming album, Chapter 2 Legacy, and that track is called Afterlife. So yeah, those are a few things too. And I also had an interesting band. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but our friend Mike Crea sent it to me. It's a band called Written by Wolves, and the song was called To Tell You the Truth. And that had a very, very, very cool music video. Kind of has like more of like a modern rock, prog rock kind of vibe, but another good track that something a little bit different than what I'm used to listening to or we're used to talking about, which is always welcome. So just a few things to mention.
I obviously, you mentioned a number of my favorites. I have not heard Written by Wolves. I will definitely check that out, and I'll try to post it this week for everybody's benefit, including my own. I just want to mention two other things that I think are really noteworthy. Italian power prog metalers Eldritch released their new single, Cry of a Nation, which was honestly one of the best Eldritch songs I've heard in, I don't want to even say years. I'll go back and say decades. This stuff was really, really good. And if you're a fan of the stuff from like Headquake and Il Nino, you're going to love this track. So I'll try to post that this week.
I noticed that it was written by keyboard player Oleg Smirnov, so I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it.
He was such a good songwriter, and he's back in the band apparently as a full-time member, and I think that that's why the sound harkens back to the old albums, because he wrote a lot of that older material really, really good, and I look forward to hearing more from them just because it feels like it had been a while, and their last two albums were really good, but this song I just found to be fantastic.
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet, but I literally just downloaded it, so I'll be listening to it very soon.
And then one other album, which I did hear in its entirety, and I think I played the thing about 5 times this week. The new album by Sleep Token. The album is called This Place Will Become Your Tomb. I will go and say at this point it's easily a top 10 album for me, and I just keep playing it over and over, and it's kind of a unique take on modern prog rock or prog metal. I I don't even know how to describe these guys. It almost sounds like something you would hear on modern rock radio. Uh, it's got like a bit of an alternative vibe, but it's just really clean sounding with this incredible vocalist who, he doesn't have that soaring vocals that sometimes we talk about, like we're about to talk about in a few minutes with the Lord album. But it's just music that you can kind of just listen and relax and chill to. And it's just like intoxicating is the word I would use. And the band's kind of a mystery. When they perform live, they have masks on, so you really have no idea who these guys or girls are. But one of my up-and-coming favorite bands. They've only been around for about 5 or 6 years. But this album, if it's any indication, that the future is very bright for these guys.
I literally just bought it on your recommendation alone, so I will definitely give that a shot.
I will send you $15 if you don't love the album. I think it's different, so you can't go into it thinking it's the new Dream Theater album or something that you've heard that's tried and true. Just listen to it for what it is, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Let's see if it ends up on my best of 2021 list by the end of the year.
That is kind of the goal, because without giving too much of a spoiler, it's already in my top 10.
Also, by the way, I was just looking at the Eldritch track list, and the last track they do a cover of Bon Jovi's "Runaway," which is like
that's
one of probably my favorite Bon Jovi song ever. So I look forward to hearing that. Eldritch has done a couple of cool covers over the years, including My Sharona, and they do a good job with those.
100%. And with that, let's get into the reason why we're here. Listener of the show, Rob Hamilton, had asked us to do Lord's Set in Stone.
I thought you were going to say Rob Halford. I got really excited.
If he's more than welcome to join us as well. The Metal Exchange is definitely open for business. But Rob Hamilton wrote in, and I'll just read a little bit about what he wrote before we dive into the album. He said, quote, "Lord has been one of my favorite bands since I first saw them in their previous incarnation as Dungeon in Melbourne in 2001, a show which left me buzzing. They released a number of high-quality albums, but really stepped it up a level when they became Lord and added a variety of new elements to their sound. Their latest release, Fallen Idols, is fantastic and received a lot of positive press after its release a couple of years ago, but my favorite album of theirs is still Set in Stone. It offers perhaps their widest range of styles of any of their albums, making each song distinct and meaning that one song does not blend into the next. Something we'll get to. The musicianship and vocals are top-notch, resulting in an album that's worth listening to many times over." I thought it was a great summary and kind of really set the stage for what we're about to talk about. So thank you, Rob, for those words and obviously for the request. And with that, we'll talk about some Lord. When did you first hear these guys, or had you heard of Dungeon, or had you really just gotten into the Lord material in the early 2000s?
I did not know of Dungeon until I became familiar with Lord. I'm trying to remember where it started for me. I'm trying to remember if I met the bass player Andy Dowling before I even knew of the band. I'm usually so good at remembering these kinds of things, and this one has me a little bit stumped. I know that when they were announced to play at Prague Power, that I was excited about the announcement. So at that point, I was a fan of the band, but I just, for the life of me, can't remember. Let me see the earliest track I had added to my iTunes collection. It looks like I just bought their entire back catalog in 2015. I must have heard one song or somebody said something about something, and I was just I heard one song and I was like, I'm just gonna just dive in, and because it looks like I bought their entire catalog of albums, and then shortly after that, their EP "What Tomorrow Brings" came out, and that was the first thing that I really dug into with Lord, and it started with this 25-minute epic opening track, album title "What Tomorrow Brings," fantastic, and then with this great Lord is, and we'll talk about this for sure, is the one of the best cover bands for a band that's not a cover band. They do so many great covers, and their most recent release was a compilation of all the covers they did. And on this one, they had, The Police's "Message in a Bottle" and Halloween's "Someone's Crying," which is of all the Halloween songs to choose, they went with a random Roland song from Pink Bubbles Go Ape. Like,
I'm so happy you mentioned that. Obviously, we'll get into some of the later material, not in as much depth, obviously, but just they are. You mentioned Eldritch earlier with their covers. Lord is like the king of the covers, and when they covered Someone's Crying, I couldn't believe it, because if you gave me a list of 50 Halloween songs, that probably wouldn't have been on the list. It may not have been in the 100 that I would have expected, but they do a great job with that. But their original material is good, is very good too. Obviously, I had first heard of Dungeon back around 2000. I think I had just started listening to Vanishing Point and Black Majesty and one other band, Pegasus, who in retrospect, I don't enjoy nearly as much as I used to. But you had all these up and coming Australian bands, and the one that I heard was this band Dungeon, but I never really heard their material. And for whatever reason, Lord kind of just went under the radar for me. I had heard songs, but I never heard albums. So as much as I'm familiar with some of their newer material, I don't think I had ever heard an album straight through by the band. So this was really kind of eye-opening for me. I did not know what to expect. I knew the general sound. I did not see them at Prague Power, but I had heard that show was absolutely packed and one of the best opening sets that festival had ever had. So this was really exciting for me, and I'm happy that Rob chose the album. I did a little bit of research in terms of just where this fits in the pantheon of Lord albums, and a lot of people have it as their favorite. Not sure if that's because of just the diversity of the album, or if it's because it was just the kind of where they were as a band at the time. But for some reason, this is a very, very highly regarded album, and I can certainly see why.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, I don't know the albums in and out as well as I would like to, and I think we both discussed like really going back and kind of. I mean, I definitely don't know much of the Dungeon material, other than some of the songs that Lord would go. They went back and re-recorded the entire Dungeon discography and released this special Lord Dungeon era box set, which I think has 4 full albums just completely recorded. There's some bonus stuff with some original demos and stuff. So there were some songs like Tirano del Mar and Steelheart, Netherlife, Black Roses Die, just a few songs I knew they were going to play at Prague Power that I kind of prepped myself with, but I always was a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of material between Dungeon and Lord that was available. So like, I probably know more of the covers than I do of the original material, but the original material I do know, I'm a really big fan of it, and this album is definitely no exception.
Yeah, it's funny, when I was listening to the album the first time, I said to myself, you are going to absolutely eat this up, just because I know your taste. And it was such a nice contrast to the Tool album we discussed last week, because it's, apples and oranges here. You're in 2 completely different ballparks. We'll get into the band just to introduce the guys in the band. The singer, guitarist, keyboardist, and bass player extraordinaire, Lord Tim. It's kind of his band. He was what people think of when they think of that old Dungeon material. But he brings in Tim Yatras, the drummer and keyboardist, who also does backing vocals on the album. Andrew Dowling, or Andy Dowling as we like to call him, who does bass and backing vocals. And then Mark Fertner, who also does guitars and keyboards as well. This particular album also has a ton of guests, most of whom appear on a title track or an album track called Be My Guest, which is fitting, and we'll get to that in detail because I happen to love that tune.
I was disappointed it wasn't a cover from Beauty and the Beast, but
when I saw it and having not heard it, I wasn't sure if that's where we were going with this, but it's definitely not that. And I guess I'll ask you, what were your thoughts when you first heard this album, and then did it change kind of over the week as you kind of dove into it deeper?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it completely did. Like, I mean, the first time I listened to it, and again, like, I should mention that typically when I'm prepping for our episodes, like, I listen to the album we're going to do for the first time on Monday, which is never really a day that I'm feeling particularly inspired. So a lot of times, like, even same with when I listened to Tool the week before, I was just kind of like, meh, like, it's Monday. Like, I just want to finish this day so I can go lay down on the couch and go eat dinner.
Big lofty goals you have there.
Yeah, I mean, on a Monday, it's about all I can strive for. But so, I guess it kind of all ran together for me. And I mean, if I was kind of like really into whatever it is I was doing for work, and I might not have been paying as close attention, but as the week went on and I kept listening to it, like each song kind of, kind of grew into a more unique sound to me. And I ended up really understanding, or just appreciating everything that was on this album. And I was surprised that a power metal album would be a grower for me, because that's usually how I am with prog metal, where it's like I need to let it kind of set in. And but in this case, it was for me. And one of the things I found really interesting is that I found that there are so many elements of other power metal bands that I would hear. And I'll wait until we talk about each individual track to kind of point them out. It's just really interesting because they still manage to have a signature Lord sound, but at the same time, you get these little sprinkles of other bands that I'm sure inspired them.
I am curious to see if you heard the same bands that I did, because there wasn't really a blatant ripoff anywhere. It's not that egregious, but the inspiration behind it, I think, was clear. And I'm wondering if we kind of hit on the same bands with some of these songs, because then I know it's not just me, because I definitely noticed that as well. The first time I listened to it, I said to myself, "This is pretty. It's a good album. Like it's not bad by any means." And there was stuff here that I kind of latched onto. By the third listen, I was really enjoying it, and I was like, it went from like I can listen to this to actually wanting to listen to it, if that makes sense. And to your point, not. That usually doesn't happen with power metal. I don't need it to marinate. It usually just either hits me right away, or I just kind of go in a different direction. This one was a grower, and that was good, because as I think I listened to it 5 times. By the 5th listen, I really knew the tracks, and I was really enjoying myself and looking forward to the next one, because I knew what it was, as I was kind of going into it. So let's just get into it, I guess. The track starts, or I should say the album starts with a kind of a weird opener, Specters of the Ascendant. It's an instrumental track, but there's really not much to it. It's kind of different than a lot of what the power metal bands were doing 10, 12 years ago, with like these lofty symphonic instrumental tracks. This is more of just like an ambient, like ghost type thing. And then it just kicks right off into Redemption, the first real track on the album.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me, like, it's funny you should mention that, because like I think of like Halloween kind of being the first power metal band to like do that. On the Keeper albums, you had Initiation and Invitation, where it was kind of like this grandiose, like like symphonic classical style intro that goes and like blasts into the next like super heavy power metal track. And this one reminded me also of Halloween, but on like a later album, like Dark Ride, where it was a little bit more like kind of this like creepy kind of intro, like beware, the music is gonna come and get you shortly. So yeah, like in a way it was nothing like Halloween and just like Halloween all in one fell swoop, but it does go into Redemption, and it's like, all right, we're gonna get let's get the show on the road here. And so this was the first thing I thought of hearing this track was Labyrinth. Did you hear that?
I actually have in my notes Gamma Ray, and I'll explain why. A blazing riff to open the album. I do agree you have a lot of double bass drum here, which definitely reminds me of Labyrinth in that sense. But this is like classic power metal the second this starts, with the soaring vocals over the top, and I have in my notes good range, and I wrote that because I don't think I ever realized the range that Tim has when he's singing this stuff. But he can definitely do something in the lower octaves, but when it's time to put his foot on the gas, he really kind of soars over the top of this stuff. I think it's a really good opening track, and with a catchy chorus. Not my favorite track on the album, but it really sets the stage for the next 10 tracks.
Yeah, I think his lower register kind of reminded me of Rob Tyrant's lower register right at the very beginning of the song. So I think that's why I picked up a Labyrinth vibe. But I get gamma ray vibes, especially the dual guitar, all throughout the album. So I
Yes.
definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and it was funny because as I was listening to it, I could just tell it reminded me of something, as a lot of power metal does, obviously, but I definitely thought it was noteworthy there. What's interesting, though, is this took a real zig where I thought it was going to zag, and by that I mean the second real track is called 100 Reasons. This is an outlier track for me, and it's one that, even though it got better as the week went on, I still don't think I understand why this track was placed where it was. It is really kind of like an 80s Motley Crue song that kind of evolves into an Ed Guy song later on. It's not that I don't like it. It just seems like it was not where I would have put this track. I would have buried it deeper on the album, if that makes sense.
This was my song of the week.
Get out of here. Was it really?
Yeah. I think that the vocal line in the chorus is such a catchy melody. I love this song. It's just, I agree with you that it feels a little bit out there, compared to the rest of the album, but I think that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, it's definitely different. It's an outlier. And the first time, I'll be completely honest, when I heard it on Monday, I said to myself, "Ooh, I don't know, I'm not crazy about this." But at the same time, as I kind of got deeper into it, I said to myself, it got better. It never kind of clicked, and I just wish it was somewhere else. But I certainly appreciate that, and I'm glad you chose it because it will force me to listen to it again. But now we really, to me, is when the album really starts picking up with Eternal Storm, which is the fourth track. What did you think about that?
Like heavy, whereas 100 Reasons was a little bit more, I think, almost like a pop metal song. This was like, all right, now we're gonna, and again, this is such a great example of how varied this album is, which is weird for me to have thought that it all kind of blended together the first time I listened to it, because now I listen to it and it's like each song really has its own distinct flavor, I think, but this one definitely has a bit of a more crunchiness to it, a little bit thrashier than the last track. Another really good tune. I like this one a lot, and definitely just a very different song from 100 Reasons.
100%. And I think the contrast really does make it pop a little bit. It's a little bit repetitive for me, but I do think the guitar work on this song especially was really, really good. The next track is the title track, Set in Stone. And this, to me, is a really great tune. A little bit of a simple, but certainly a catchy riff. This was the song where the verses and the chorus really kind of stuck in my head. And I'd argue maybe the best vocals on the entire album. This reminded me of two bands in particular. I don't know if you had the same thing, but before I get into it, do you want to venture a guess as to who that might be? The verses remind me of one band, and then the instrumental section reminds me of another.
It's not fresh in my mind at the moment, so all right, I'll let you know if I agree with you. So go ahead.
The verses remind me of Mob Rules.
Okay, that I could definitely see. And
then the instrumental section, it reminds me very much of Hammerfall.
Yep. Yeah, the guitars are very. You're right. Like just even the rhythm guitars are very Hammerfall-esque, and that was another band that I picked up kind of a vibe on too.
Absolutely.
But I mean, again, like the double, the dual guitar thing is kind of something that kind of Halloween, trademarked in the beginning, and most power metal bands kind of follow that same thing. But yeah, just the tone of the guitar is very Hammerfall-esque, especially in this song.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album. I thought about it actually being my song of the week. I'm still debating between this and another one. I think I'm going to go in another direction, but this was definitely up there. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it's one of the songs that they play live a lot.
Yeah, they played it at when they played at Prague Power. Which if we don't talk about it on this episode, we'll talk about it. We're going to have an exclusive interview with Andy, and we'll definitely talk about it with him. And maybe we'll just save that discussion with him. I think it'll be better coming from him than us. But this was one of the songs that, probably the only song on the album that I knew really well going into this week. And so I already was a big fan of the song, and I still am.
Nice. The next track is kind of a little bit of a slower tune, with keyboards that are very, very prominent at the beginning and one of the more melodic songs on the album. And then all of a sudden the vocal styles change during the verses, and we have like a bit of a screamer here, and it's almost reminiscent of like melodic death metal in some ways, just the way that the vocals kick in. For the longest time, the chorus on this song was reminding me of something, and I could not figure it out. And then finally, the last time that I listened to the album on the way back from the wedding yesterday, I put my finger on it, and it actually reminds me of some of the Balance of Power material off Chemical Imbalance, which was kind of like their last release. I couldn't for the life of me figure it out, and then it hit me. This track is awesome. And like, I don't know if it's a track that like a lot of people talk about. Certainly one that I'll ask Andy about, because it turns out that he co-wrote this particular song as well as a handful of others on the album. I love this song. I thought it was a really refreshing track, and it blended in so many styles seamlessly. Yeah,
and it was like the first track on the album to kind of feature more aggressive vocals, which I thought was kind of interesting. It gave it a little bit of a kind of a death metal vibe to it. But again, the beginning of this, I got a little bit of like a Twilightning to go like deep in the weeds.
One of my favorites
with the keyboard intro, just because I love this band. I mean, I always gravitate towards power metal bands that have prominent keyboards. Like Power Quest is probably my favorite band in the world, and they're basically a keyboard-led power metal band. Shout out to Dr. Death, Steve Williams. And so, like, when I hear a song like this start out with keys like that, it already gets me excited. And so for it to kind of start out with that, like, happy power metal kind of keyboard intro, and then to just go into like this screamy kind of aggressive track, it's a really interesting dichotomy all rolled up into one tune. But the screams kind of give me a bit of a Children of Bodom vocal.
Yeah,
that'd be the comparison I would give it. It's not like a real guttural kind of like Cannibal Corpse kind of sound, but more of like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm no expert in death vocals, but it did remind me of a Children of Bodom kind of vocal.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't expecting it, and I think that might have been part of the reason it stood out to me so much, because it just kind of came out of nowhere. But you know what? I'm actually going to make it my song of the week. I actually enjoyed this song a lot, and the second half of this album is really good as well. But I'm going to make this my song of the week.
Some say it's all in your mind. Life built to stop to be proud, then cuts you down like an empty lie. Find yourself in the struggle again. See the life's just another drive. Find a shelter from the endless rain. Sometimes you find yourself always asking why. I drag myself to my feet. I take what's rightly mine. On the sea
and then kind of a well-placed power ballad right after it in Forever. It's funny. I have it down as obligatory because it's like every one of these power albums needs this song, and this was Lord's. It gets a lot heavier during the instrumental section, and this was one of the tracks where Andy's bass playing really stood out to me. It's kind of an epic tune in many ways, and it's a longer song. It clocks in at about 8 minutes, but I thought this was a really good. Their version of the power ballad was really good.
Yeah, it almost has kind of like a waltzy kind of tempo to it. I could almost picture like this, like, deliberate kind of like slowed waltz dance going to it. I don't think Nick played it at his wedding, unfortunately, but
and unfortunately we're not on videos, but I got to see you dance in your chair, so at least we got that going for us.
Yeah, well, it was either dance in the chair or the chair collapsed underneath me because I think it was made out of old wicker. I was a little nervous for a little bit of that time. I was eating my salad daintily, hoping that I didn't end up on the floor. Thankfully, that wedding was not videotaped. I am so glad, as each one of us was announced to the wedding floor by the wrong name. I was like, no one will ever have to see this again. Thankfully, so
and now you've just recorded it for all to hear. But yes,
yeah, but no one will have to see it. So
amen to that. Thoughts on Forever, other than just like kind of your standard run of the mill track?
I would have guessed that an 8-minute power ballad would have gotten boring, and this one doesn't. So I think that's a testament to the strength of the songwriting. It's good. It's good stuff. And I'm not 100% sure if Lord made a music video for this, but if you've never seen Lord's music videos, just take like a few minutes out of your day, go to YouTube, and their music videos are so fun. It's just mostly just a bunch of guys having a good time. They're one of my favorite bands to add to a Power Hour set list, just because their music videos are always so entertaining. These are definitely guys that don't take themselves too seriously,
which is refreshing. Which is refreshing for a number of reasons, and I agree with you. Entertaining stuff, to say the least. After this, and it's funny, I also have in my notes, doesn't feel 8 minutes because it doesn't drag, and I guess that's a testament to the song's strength. But if it was dragging for anyone, Behind the Light, the next track doesn't. This is a much faster track, kind of with that galloping intro, a much shorter, concise song, if you will. And what stood out to me here were the layered vocals during the choruses. I just absolutely love how the song ends the same. A very good track, kind of buried in the middle of the album, but a solid release for a power metal disc.
I agree, and I'm actually I'm looking up to see if which songs from this album were there were music videos made for. Which oddly enough, the one I do remember, they made a music video for the bonus track, which we'll get to, and it's that's a very entertaining music video. But I agree with everything you just said. This is another really good song, a little bit more of a mid-tempo tune, but it kind of it's good. It's quick, but it's good stuff. I like this one a lot.
Which brings us to The End of Days, track number 9, another one of my favorites on the album, where again you have those melodic death metal vocals and this furious double bass drum playing. What was cool about this was this track actually has its own intro, which is kind of like a string orchestra and then applause. I really thought that was a nice touch. I didn't know what was happening. I thought for a second I hit the wrong button and another track had started.
Did it remind you of anything?
Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I heard it and I said to myself, "Oh, did I put on some Megadeth by accident?" But it's really, really good. I thought the opera was about to start, and then the guitar riff kicks in. I said, We're not at the opera. This is a really cool track, and I love again the dual layered vocals here is just perfect. I thought they were 2 for 2 with that, and they really didn't use it all over the album, but that when they did employ it, I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of fellow Australian band Voyager, where they sprinkle it in just enough to the point where it's not overbearing. And I agree with you. And the chorus in the song is really one of the catchier choruses on the album. But
Very
I like
nearly
this
my
one a
song of
lot.
the week.
Yeah, and this is another pretty long one. It's almost 8.5 minutes long, but definitely definitely a really strong track. I mean, I don't really think there were any songs that I didn't think were less than very good on this whole album.
I don't disagree. I was pleasantly surprised. What I will say is that first listen, that first time through on Monday, the track that actually stood out to most of me was Be My Guest. The concept behind this song and the execution I thought was phenomenal. I'm going to talk about the production for a second, which is I don't think this is the best sounding album. I think that the bass is a little bit like lost in the mix a little bit. I don't know. I'll ask Andy if the band was mad at him when we get him on. But it's just I thought the mix was merely okay. But when you listen to Be My Guest, this particular track, it's just what it sounds like. The band invited a ton of musicians to kind of come on and do solos throughout this entire, almost 8 minute instrumental track. And it's like a who's who of soloists from all different walks of life. And I'll just read some of them. You have Craig Goldie, the old Dio guitar player. You have Glenn Drover, formerly of Megadeth, and King Diamond doing a guitar solo. Felipe Andreoli of Angra. Olaf Mork from Dragonland and Amaranth. Chris Brooks, Stu Marshall, formerly of Dungeon, Chris Porcienko, your boy from Vanishing Point, and a whole host of others. That it's basically just one solo after the next thrown together, and I couldn't believe how well this was done. Like, it was a real pleasant surprise, and I love the title.
It went right over my head. Like, I really enjoyed the song. I was like, wow, this is a long instrumental song. It wasn't until this morning when I pulled up the album on Wikipedia and I'm like, oh, now I
makes
understand.
sense now. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm in the know now.
Yeah. And it was, I mean, obviously really cool of everyone to kind of jump on and do this. I don't know how they were able to produce this in such a way where it kind of goes seamlessly. You don't realize what it is, obviously, because it took you a bunch of listens and some fan Wikipedia page to figure it out. But like, this was really, really good and different and something that I hadn't ever seen before. I mean, you see guest spots all the time, but you don't see an entire song of guest spots, which is really what this is.
Yeah. And, again, like, I got very heavy Halloween vibes on a lot of the dual guitar solos where it just kind of and not just Halloween, but specifically Roland and Wyke Halloween when they were the two guitar players in the band. That kind of Master of the Rings, Time of the Oath, Better Than Raw kind of time. I always think that's going to go down as the most underrated like time period of Halloween, just because you have the Keeper era and then you have the longest running lineup now and then the reunion era. So I feel like it's going to leave that part of Halloween's history kind of a little bit underappreciated, but I definitely got that Time of the Oath kind of feel from this one.
Yeah, and obviously that's when we started listening to them, so a little bit of a nostalgia feel for us, but yeah, great song, well done. And to bring you back down, we go to New Horizons, which is the penultimate track. To me, this is your classic Hammerfall ballad. Not my favorite song on the album, but a good ballad, very much in the Hammerfall vein.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think that Lord does a really good job at the more slower, emotional, ballady type tracks, and this is another example of that. And I like this one a lot.
And what are your thoughts on Kylie Minogue?
I love this cover. And I'll be very honest with you. To this day, I don't think I've ever actually heard the original song. I know Locomotion, I think, is the extent of my Kylie Minogue knowledge. I remember she made like a comeback in the early 2000s, but I don't remember what the song was. I'm guessing the song is good because like the cover of it is a blast. And
for an Australian band, I think it's very fitting. But just to clear things up, On a Night Like This is the closing track of the album. And from what I understand, that other regions had different bonus tracks, but they all had this track on the album, which is obviously a she's very famous in Australia. I'd be lying if I said I knew more than one other song. So I agree with you. But this is just a really fun cover, and I'm just kind of a sucker for covers to end albums. I just think it's a nice tribute to the past in many ways. And in this case,
yeah, and watch the music video if you haven't seen it. It's great. We should post it during the week. It's just worth watching. Some versions of the album also have a track "Hear No Evil," and I kind of went out of my way to. I think when I was purchasing everything from them, I bought they did a Hear No Evil EP, which featured this song and also has On a Night Like This, I guess, in case, I don't know if there were any versions that were missing that track. I think you just said that they were all on it. So, and then there's another version of, like an alternate version of Set in Stone also, but Hear No Evil is another kind of just cool, faster paced power metal song, which is, if you're going to listen to the rest of the album and you don't have this, you can jump onto YouTube or grab it for 99 cents on the iTunes store. It's worth it just to kind of fill out your Set in Stone era collection of Lorde songs.
I like it. I like it a lot. And I'll say this, and this is the biggest kind of testament to the album. It clocks in at 63 minutes and 52 seconds. The album does not feel 63 minutes and 52 seconds. It feels like your typical 45 to 50 minute album, which I thought was a testament to the strength of some of these tracks.
Yeah, well, I mean, like we mentioned, like there's a handful of songs that are rather long, like, between almost 7 minutes up to almost, 8.5 minutes. But I mean, it never drags, and that's really great. And like I just remember, I think of like Dragon Force after their first album, they would have like these 8-minute, 9-minute, 10-minute like power metal songs, and it was so masturbatory and repetitive to me in a lot of cases. And I'm like, these songs do not need to be this long. Or like the song Saint Anger by Metallica. It's like, why is this song so long? It's such a good song. If you can just
the
make
radio edit version would have been better.
Yeah, like make it a 4-minute song. It doesn't need to be this long because you're basically just playing the song over again, just for the sake of it. And that you don't get that sense at all on this album. It's really good stuff, and I'm glad that Rob asked us to listen to it. It kind of reminded me that I really need to do a deeper dive on this band on a personal level, maybe go on a personal journey, if you will.
Yeah.
And just get into, because as far as everything new they've done, their What Tomorrow Brings EP and their Fallen Idols album and their Undercovers, cover album, that stuff I'm very familiar with because I just bought them when they came out and listened to them when they came out. But the older stuff, again, like I said, it was very daunting to see a band with that much material. And then I went ahead and I couldn't resist buying the Dungeon Era box set. And then that just added another, cause it came with both the re-recorded versions of the Dungeon songs, but also came with the original recordings of the Dungeon songs. So I found myself with an extra 7 or 8 albums to listen to. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just overwhelmed myself.
I've not heard the re-recorded material. How does it sound compared to some of the older stuff? Because some of the Dungeon material, obviously, you're going back to the mid to late 90s. It's kind of raw sounding, which a lot of the albums were at that time. Just sonically, does it sound much improved? Because I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like any other Lorde album from the 2013, 2014, 2015, around that time. And I'm assuming that was the reason they went ahead and did this, because they probably recognized that they weren't dealing with the cleanest production values initially. So,
and even though
it was worth it.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was worth it for them to go back and kind of redo it with the current lineup. And being that Tim was still their vocalist, I mean, it still has that, that classic Dungeon vocal sound. So, yeah, it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of that older stuff. If you want to hear it a little bit more cleaned up, a little more modernized, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and even this album, like I said, I didn't think the production was the best, but their newer stuff got much better, and they've really stepped up their game in that department. Their stuff is very, very clean, but still has that raw, power metal sound to it in many ways. I'll ask you this, scale of 1 to 10, what are you giving this?
I am giving this a 8.25. I think it's a very, very good album, and I enjoy it very much. And I think that I think it's going to be one of those things where as the years go on and I go back and listen to it, it's going to become more nostalgic for me, and it'll probably become higher than an 8.25 in the future. But I was surprised at how much I ended up enjoying this. I mean, I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I enjoyed it more than even what I expected to. And I think 100 Reasons is going to become like a regular play for me. I just really, really enjoyed that song a lot. And I thought it was funny how you kind of introed it as an outlier, and I was just like, yep, song of the week. So.
Yeah, listen, I mean, it's unquestionably an outlier on this. It has a different feel to it. Like I said, it harkened me back to, I don't know, Dr. Feelgood or something, at least to start. And then it kind of just morphed into, I don't know, Vainglory Opera. It was really kind of a weird track, but I certainly see the appeal. To me, the album is an 8.0. I thought it was very, very good, and it was trending up. I don't know if I would have ever gone back and listened to this, so I am very appreciative of the recommendation, and I look forward to asking some more questions of Andy when we get him on the line, just because there's stuff that I just want to know that I think he'll be able to answer that I myself, as I sit here and talk to you, don't really know or appreciate. But this album was a really good listen. And before we get to your album of the week for next week, some metal news that I think is definitely worth noting. Just a couple of things. First of all, one of your favorite frontmen of all time is hanging up the leather pants. David Lee Roth calling it quits after so many decades. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just glad you said leather pants and not assless chaps. So,
well, yeah, I guess that's true. It's funny when you think about these legends, but he's been doing it for so long. I can certainly understand why he's hanging it up. I think he's doing a residency in Las Vegas right now, but this is the end of the road for him.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely is one of my favorite vocalist of all time, but if you've heard anything live from him over the end of the Van Halen live era, I mean, he was living on reputation alone. I feel like his vocals were just not good, and years of touring and partying and stuff is going to catch up to you. I think that in the end, at the end of the Van Halen era, Sammy's going to be remembered as the better live vocalist, but I'm always going to be a Roth guy. Just those original 1984 and previous Van Halen songs are always going to just be a notch above anything they did with Sammy. But yeah, I mean, I never got to see him live, which sucks. But maybe it's a good thing. I don't have to go out on this memory of him being a shell of his former self. But you can't take away the fact that this guy was the ultimate front man and put on a show, even if he couldn't sing. I mean, the guy was entertaining as hell. And so, I mean, cheers to a phenomenal career and, a controversial, but, he's a legend in hard rock and heavy metal. And so, good luck to David Lee Roth and everything he does. And Adam Sandler was the one who made me realize that he likes the menorah. So
thank you, Adam Sandler, for that. One other bit of news, which I think is worth mentioning, a little bit of sad news. We've obviously covered Savatage on this show. I'll give you a little peek behind the curtain. We are planning on doing another Savatage album at the start of December, which is kind of our unofficial Savatage month. Here at the Metal Exchange. John Oliva arrested for DUI and cocaine possession. I got the news yesterday. I was very disheartened to hear this. 62 years old, arrested at 3:45 in the morning, and ultimately released from jail, but facing some serious charges. Just want to make sure that the Mountain King is okay, because he is a true legend, and I just hope he's taking care of himself.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I just came across something that I found really interesting. Dave Mustaine from Megadeth is doing a cross an autograph signing / beer tasting event in Nashville, which is really cool. And I never tried the Saison 13, but the Tout Le Monde beer, which both are crafted by the brewery Unibrow. I love the Tout Le Monde beer. It was like this light but hoppy kind of flavor. I went to this bar that had it on tap, and I didn't know anything about it, and I had one. I loved it so much. I had 3 of them, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get so wrecked. And then I went home and I found out it was like 4.0% alcohol. It's actually like a fairly light beer, but I thought it was a very tasty beer. And as somebody who, I thought the Iron Maiden beer was disappointing, and Pearl Jam made a beer that I didn't think was very good. This was probably one of my favorites, along with who was it? Another band I really enjoyed their beer. I'm blanking on it, but this was one of my favorite band related beers. I'd like to try the Saison as well, but I just thought that was kind of a fun thing. I know Dave is always saying something to get everybody up in some sort of uproar, but this sounds like a kind of a cool thing if you're a Megadeth fan.
I went to see Megadeth a couple of weeks ago at an outdoor venue, Jones Beach, here on Long Island. A couple of weeks ago, as I said, they had the Saison 13 beer as one of like the beer specials, and I had more than one. It is fantastic, and I like the Tout Le Monde beer as well. I thought the Saison 13 was even better. Packs a little bit more punch. It's got, I think, over 6% alcohol, but it's just a really, really tasty drink. I think Beers of the World may be calling. You got to get over there and grab that in your area.
Yeah, I'm wondering if people like were messaging Dave and being like, "Your beer didn't get us screwed up enough. Like, get us a stronger beer." And
he did, because the alcohol. But it's one of those high alcohol content beers, but it doesn't quite taste like you're drinking, like, something with high alcohol content.
I call that dangerous.
Yes, which is the best definition I can give it. But I definitely recommend it and give it 2 thumbs up. So very, very interesting there. But I guess that brings us to next week. Obviously, we'll drop an interview later this week. But what am I listening to this week?
Oh, I think you're going to be very, very pleased. So I've been kind of holding back on this one because there was an interview I wanted to get for us, and I had to wait until the interviewee was available, and that interviewee would be former Halloween guitarist Roland Grappo, who has agreed to do an interview with us. And being that our good friend Justin Westmoreland had asked us to talk about Master Plan's debut self-titled album, I'm going to just bring all these things all together in one fell swoop. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. I think it's one of the best debut albums that any band's ever released. And as a diehard Halloween fan, the chance to kind of chat with Roland, who I got to meet at Prog Power, and is just a super nice guy. I'm really looking forward to listening to this again, and also getting to chat with Roland. So I can't believe I made it through. I can't believe I made it through 3 days hanging out with you without saying anything. Even Mike came up to me at one point. He's like, "Did you tell Justin about Roland?"
I asked you not to tell me, but I'll just give you the round of applause again. I don't know how you pulled this off, but I'm like fanboying out here. This album is like gold, and obviously there's so much that went into this time period, and the band has evolved from there with a number of good releases. But I look forward to this immensely, and Roland just seems like such a good guy, so I think that'll be a really awesome chat with him.
Yeah, I feel like
well done, my friend. Well done.
We've been on a roll with getting great guests to talk to, and we'll be talking to Andy Dowling later on today, that episode will drop in a few days after this one, and it's just been so much fun, and we got to talk a lot to our good friends over the weekend about just the whole process and how we got started on this. And like Brian had mentioned, he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you guys have done over 50 episodes of these." And he was listening to the Eternity X episode in the car, and he called me up, and he's like, "I had to stop the episode and go back and listen to the album so that I had a little bit more context to what I was listening to." But he was like, "You really kind of like brought back all these memories of this album I listened to so many times in high school." So, and that's the kind of reaction that like I love to hear. And, so it was cool to have like an old friend kind of listen to it for the first time and have some thoughts about it. And he said that the thing that he really enjoyed was hearing the kind of personal anecdotes that went along with where we were when we first heard it, and what kind of emotions and thoughts and memories that it elicit. So that was really cool. So yeah, it's this has been so much fun, and we carry on.
Yeah, carry on. We do. Great choice for next week. I look forward to it. To everyone else out there, continue to contact us. We love hearing from you, and it really brightens my day, especially when people we don't know are finding us and listening to us and sending us feedback one way or another. So we appreciate that. If there's any albums you want us to do, send the requests over. We're happy to do your albums that you want to hear. Engage with us on social media and spread the word. And we'll be back to you a little bit later this week, and then again next week with some master plan. Good job, Chris. I'm proud of you. I like this one a lot.
Thanks. I don't think we heard back from Rob as far as what his song of the week is, but I'm sure we'll hear from him before we post it. So we'll post his song
100%
during the week. But yeah, thanks to Rob for the request. Good stuff. And yeah, like Justin said, keep those requests coming, because these are becoming kind of my favorite ones to do, because they're usually something that I really need to kind of go back and re-familiarize myself or familiarize myself for the first time with. So
as we'll be doing next month, because we have next month picked out, and it's something that both of us have zero familiarity with. So
yes.
that'll be different, to say the least.
Yeah, so good stuff. I'm excited to talk to Andy later today and roll in sometime next week, and just roll on and keep doing what we're doing. It's been a blast. Thanks for everybody for all the kind words, and yeah, just as always, I'm very, very grateful to be doing this with you.
Cheers. I will talk to you soon, bud. Take it easy.
All right, take care.